This is the B-2 Spirit. It costs $2 billion, weighs 80 tons, and vanishes from radar. On June 22, 2025, 7 of them flew from Missouri to Iran without stopping and destroyed a mountain nothing else on Earth could touch. But how? And why only this plane? Just after midnight on June 21, 2025, 7 aircraft lift off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. No lights, no radio, no announcement. Their pilots kissed their families goodbye hours earlier without being able to say where they were going. Each B-2 carries something heavier than a school bus in its belly, a 30,000-pound bunker buster called the GBU-57, the largest non-nuclear bomb America has ever built. And there's only one target on Earth big enough to justify it: Fordow. Buried deep inside an Iranian mountain sits a uranium enrichment facility, carved into solid rock, shielded by hundreds of feet of stone. No cruise missile can reach it. No fighter jet can crack it. For 15 years, it was the one target the United States couldn't touch. Tonight, that changes. But first, the deception. Days earlier, President Trump announced he'd take 2 weeks to decide on Iran. 2 days later, 6 B-2s were spotted flying toward Guam. Every satellite, every intelligence agency, every news network watched Guam. Nobody noticed the 7 bombers flying the opposite way. They turn east and vanish over the Atlantic. Ahead lie 37 hours of flight and multiple mid-air refuelings in total darkness, with a fuel boom hovering just 16 feet behind the cockpit, completely invisible to the pilot flying the plane. By 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the 7 bombers are almost overhead. F-22s and F-35s clear the sky ahead. Tomahawk missiles strike other Iranian sites as distractions. Iran's radar operators see the fighters. They see the missiles. What they don't see are the 7 bombers directly above them, because on radar, an 80-ton B-2 shows up smaller than a bumblebee. And here's where it gets genius. 3 days before the strike, Iran had poured concrete over Fordow's 2 main ventilation shafts, hoping to seal the facility against attack. But the Americans had predicted this exact move 15 years earlier. The plan wasn't ruined. The plan had accounted for it. The first bomb shatters the concrete cap. Then bombs 2, 3, 4, and 5 drop straight into the exposed shaft, each traveling over 1,000 feet per second, burrowing deeper before they detonate. The 6th is a flex weapon, held in reserve in case any of the others fail. 12 into Fordow, 2 into Natanz. Not one misses. A pilot in a trailing aircraft described what he saw. "This was the brightest explosion I've ever seen. It literally looks like daylight. But the scariest part isn't the light. It's the silence that follows. No dogfights, no Iranian jets scrambling, no anti-aircraft fire. The B-2s do their job, turn around, and fly home. Iran doesn't even know they were there until CNN says so. 7 aircraft, 14 bombs, 1 mountain erased, and not a single shot fired back. No other plane on Earth could have done this. Not the B-52, not the B-1, not any fighter in any air force in the world. Only the B-2. The question is, why? To answer that, you have to understand what makes this machine impossible to stop. And that story begins with the dream America once burned in its own factory. The B-2 does 3 impossible things at once, and every one of them was necessary to reach Fordow. First, it disappears. Most aircraft light up radar like a billboard. The B-2 doesn't. Its entire shape is built to scatter radar waves, bouncing them away instead of back at the source. Its skin is coated in a classified radar-absorbing material, a compound packed with tiny iron particles that literally converts radar energy into heat. The result is a radar signature roughly the size of a small bird, an 80-ton bomber, showing up as something you'd mistake for a sparrow. That's why Iran's radar operators saw nothing. There was nothing to see. But that invisibility is fragile, almost embarrassingly fragile. The stealth coating is so delicate that a rainstorm can degrade it. A bird strike can ruin it. Even a fingerprint pressed in the wrong place can leave a mark visible to radar. That's why the B-2 can only operate from 3 bases on Earth with climate-controlled hangars. That's why crews reapply parts of that skin by hand, checking every seam with obsessive care. And that's why, in February 2008, a single B-2 named Spirit of Kansas rolled down a runway in Guam, lifted off, and rolled to the left. Moisture had gotten into 3 small pressure sensors. The flight computers thought the aircraft was climbing when it wasn't. Both pilots ejected. The plane hit the ground and burned. $1.4 billion gone in 12 seconds because of water. That's the paradox of the B-2. The most feared aircraft on Earth is also the most delicate. And the same skin that lets it vanish over Iran has to be babied the moment it lands. Second, it flies something that shouldn't fly. Look at the B-2. No tail, no vertical fins, nothing sticking up to reflect radar. That's what makes it invisible, but it's also what should make it impossible to control. A flying wing is aerodynamically unstable. Without a tail, it constantly wants to twist and tumble out of the sky. So how does it stay level? Instead of a rudder, the B-2 uses split rudders, clamshell surfaces on each wingtip that open to drag one side and steer the aircraft. But those surfaces are slow and weak by design, which is why the B-2 turns like a whale, not a fighter. To make up for it, 4 computers run in parallel behind the scenes, making 1,000 tiny corrections every single second the aircraft is airborne. No human could fly this plane by hand. The machine flies itself and lets the pilot point it where it needs to go. Now imagine being one of those pilots. The cockpit of a B-2 is smaller than a walk-in closet. 2 seats side by side. That's it. And on the way to Fordow, you're going to sit in it for 37 hours straight. Behind the seats is a small folding cot, roughly the size of a yoga mat. When one pilot needs to sleep, the other flies alone, with only the 4 computers for company. There's a chemical toilet, a microwave, enough food to last 2 days, and a black canopy over an ocean somewhere between Missouri and the Middle East. Refueling in the dark from a boom you can't see. 37 hours. No radio, no landing, just you, your co-pilot, and 30,000 pounds of American foreign policy sitting in the bomb bay behind you. Then you arrive over Iran, drop the largest non-nuclear weapon ever built, turn the plane around, and fly 18 more hours home. That's the job. Third, it hides from heat. One last trick, and it matters. Most warplanes scream across the sky with afterburners, throwing off a heat signature any missile can lock onto. The B-2 has no afterburners at all. It flies slower on purpose. Its 4 engines are buried deep inside the wing, with intakes hidden on top of the airframe, so radar can't bounce off the spinning fan blades, and exhaust that's cooled and spread wide before it ever leaves the aircraft. To a heat-seeking missile, the B-2 barely exists. Put those three things together, and you get an aircraft that can slip into the most defended airspace on the planet, drop a bomb through hundreds of feet of rock, and leave before anyone knows it came. That's why no other plane could hit Fordow. The B-52 would be shot down before it got close. A fighter couldn't carry a bomb even a fraction of the GBU-57's size. Only the B-2 combines the stealth to get in, the payload to break the mountain, and the range to fly there from Missouri and back without landing. Only 21 of these were ever built at roughly $2.13 billion each. That's not a mass production weapon. It's a surgical tool, saved for the one mission nothing else can do. A mission exactly like Fordow. And yet, the most remarkable thing about the B-2 isn't the technology. It's the fact that this shape, this exact flying wing, was dreamed up almost 80 years ago, and America destroyed it the first time around. March 15th, 1950. Northrop's factory in Hawthorne, California. Portable smelters roll onto the floor. Jack Northrop stands with his engineers, watching them cut apart the aircraft he'd spent a decade building. Not one plane, all of them. Every YB-49 flying wing frame hauled to the smelters and melted down, while the men who designed them looked on. The YB-49 was a flying wing, no fuselage, no tail, a 172-foot wingspan, the exact same shape as the B-2 that would bomb Fordow 76 years later. Northrop believed it was the future, an aircraft that could carry more, fly farther, and burn less fuel than anything the Air Force had. He was right. He was just 40 years too early. The YB-49 had one fatal flaw, the same instability the B-2 would later face. Without a tail, it wanted to twist and tumble constantly, and only a computer fast enough to correct it 1,000 times per second could keep it stable. In 1949, that computer didn't exist. Nobody's did. So the Air Force canceled it. Officially, for performance. Unofficially, Northrop had refused to merge his company with a competitor named Convair, and the Air Force secretary who ordered the cancellation later became president of Convair. Make of that what you will. Northrop retired at 57. He walked away from aviation, from the company that bore his name. For 30 years, the flying wing sat in history books as a beautiful idea that never worked. But ideas don't die. They wait. They wait for computers to get faster, for materials to get lighter, for radar to become the enemy every bomber fears. They wait for the day a country needs to bomb a mountain nothing else can reach. Everything that made the B-2 destroy Fordow, the shape, the stealth, the tailless design, started on that factory floor in 1950. The dream America melted didn't die. It just needed the right century. And 30 years later, an old man in a wheelchair would finally learn his dream had survived. Jack Northrop wouldn't live to see his wing fly in combat, but he would see it one last time. April 1980. A secure facility outside Los Angeles. An 85-year-old man in a wheelchair is rolled into a dark room. Jack Northrop can barely move. Parkinson's has taken his voice, but his eyes still work. And what they see makes tears run down his face. Sitting in front of him, a scale model of a top-secret aircraft the Air Force spent billions developing in the shadows. No fuselage, no tail, just one giant wing, 172 feet across, the exact wingspan of his YB-49. The engineers had used his blueprints, his flight test data, his dream. He picks up a pen. His hand trembles as he writes, "Now I know why God has kept me alive for the last 25 years." 10 months later, Northrop was gone. He never saw the B-2 fly, but he saw enough to know his life's work hadn't been erased, just delayed. 8 years after his death, on July 17, 1989, the B-2 took to the sky for the first time. The flying wing the Air Force melted in 1950 was reborn, this time with the computers, the materials, and the stealth coating it always needed. And behind that machine stood an army of people the world would never see. The DTRA analyst who spent 15 years studying one mountain, a man whose name is still classified today. The low observable crews who treat each aircraft's radar-absorbing skin like sculptors because a single crack turns the aircraft visible again. The two pilots who fly 37 hours in a cockpit smaller than a closet, napping in shifts on a fold-down cot.